Kathleen Jasper here, and we are live for the Praxis 5001 elementary education exam. So I'm just going to give this a second for everybody to enter the webinar. If you can hear me, let me know in the chat. We are getting started today with the 5001. So this is the elementary education exam, and you can also use this for the 5901 as well. You start with the math and go through the science, but we are going to cover the English language arts and reading. We are covering mathematics, we are covering social studies, and we are covering science. This is a huge exam, and we're going to work on it today. So we've had a lot of people sign up for this webinar, almost 3,000, which is crazy. And so I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. I see people coming in. You can hear me. You can see me. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Just let me know in the chat where you're from. We've got people from all over the country and some from other parts of the world here who are trying to learn about this particular exam. I will just introduce myself because I know there are probably a lot of new people here who don't know me. So my name is Kathleen Jasper, and I run Kathleen Jasper LLC. And for the last 10 years, I have been helping prospective teachers and school leaders pass their certification exams and get jobs in education. So the first step of it is obviously passing these exams. Some of you are already in the classroom, and you're maybe a permanent sub, and you are now trying to pass these exams to get hired in the fall. And some of you are, brand new and you're just starting this. You might be in the College of Education taking these exams. Either way, we're going to cover it all. Now, even if you're not taking this specific exam, 5001, this is going to help you with any elementary ed exam. They all cover the same thing. I study exams. They all cover the same thing. So you're in the right place, and it's free. So just come in and get the information you need. Wow, we've got a lot of people. We have over 100 in the room. Awesome. We've got Virginia, Korea. Hannah's in Korea. Awesome. Colorado Springs, Norfolk, Virginia, Kentucky, Delaware, Kentucky, Louisiana, Colorado, Mississippi, Alabama. Awesome. Michigan, Nevada, Philippines, Utah, Louisiana. Awesome, guys. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining. Really quickly, I too was a substitute. I took these certification exams myself. I later became a full-time teacher. Then I became a curriculum specialist, which is a really cool job. If you ever get a chance to work in curriculum later on, I highly recommend it, where we learned how to build test questions from a huge testing company. The same testing company that builds these exams. So I know a lot about the testing industry. I know a lot about how these exams are structured. I'm going to share all of that with you today. And then after that job in curriculum, I became an assistant principal, where I got to work with teachers in professional development and hire teachers. And that's what I do now in my business. I left education, public ed in 2015, and I started this company, and I have been helping teachers like you and school leaders pass these exams. So today we are working from my 5001 study guide. This is a huge study guide. This has a lot of information in it. We are going to use the free study guide that came with this webinar to go through these questions and the test. But if you need more, I have a full study guide. I mean, it's ginormous with all of the information. I'm going to talk to you more about that. The free study guide is awesome. And we have so many videos, including this one, that's going to help you with the exam. So even if you just want to use free stuff, you can do it. A lot of people just use our free stuff. But if you want more, let me show you where to get that just in case. Now, if you are in the webinar and signed up, you're going to get a coupon. I think you probably already got it. And you are going to get all the resources I talk about today. After the webinar is over, you're getting the replay, the free study guide again. So if you haven't been able to download it, don't worry. I'm going to project it on my screen and we're going to go through it. So don't worry about that. And then you'll get some other resources and an offer code. So just be sure to check your email once this is over. And if you don't see it, check your spam and promotions folder. Okay. So let me just show you really quickly, and then I'll get to some questions. I have somebody says I have to take 3 different Praxis exams. Yes. Most people have to take 3. They take their subject area, which this is considered a subject area. Subject area tests are the ones you take for the content you will be teaching. So if you're going to teach elementary education, most states have adopted this particular test. Texas, I see we have some people from Texas. They have a similar one. So you're here, it's fine, stay. They all cover the same thing, I promise you. And then you take the Praxis Core, which is a basic skills exam. And then you take the PLT, which is it governs the entire process of education. And I have books and courses for all of them. All right. So let me just show you where to get some other stuff if you are interested. So you might have seen me holding up the book. We have study guides on our website. If you go to our programs and you hit 5001 here, this is going to take you to a big page here. It kind of gives you a lot of different resources to choose from. And there's like a big blog down here with a bunch of information that's helpful. But really what I want to bring you to is the 5001 study guide. And that is what I was holding up here on the screen. This is over 500 pages. When you buy it from our website, you're buying a digital download. But if you prefer a physical copy, you can go here and click this Amazon button, and it'll take you to the Amazon page. We have over almost 900 five-star reviews here. And we have been working in this test for a long, long time. I know a lot about this exam, okay? Also, we just want to tell you, this $79 spiral bound, that is not me. Somebody grabs my books, takes it out of the binding, and then puts a spiral on it and sells it for $79. Do not buy that book. Buy this book. This is crazy, and I try to get them off, but they're allowed to do this. So that's not me. This is me, Prime. Make sure you do that. Don't buy from third party. They are so annoying, and I wish they would stop, but whatever. And then if you've already bought this book and you're like, I want more practice tests, I built all these new practice tests here. And you can grab them. So there's new practice tests here. If you only need one section of the exam, you can just buy, let's say you've passed everything except the language arts. You can just buy the language arts. You can also buy the extra practice tests, or you can uncheck these here and you can just buy this. If you need 2 or more subjects, I recommend buying the whole book because it is less expensive that way. But you can also grab some extra practice tests here. We have so much. We're going to send it all to you in an email. I just want to show you guys where you can get extra stuff because you may want more than just the free study guide. All right. I just wanted to let you know about that. And again, you're going to get all of that information in email and an offer code for 20% off. Now, if you're watching me on social media, there's a link in the description on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn where you can click it, sign up, and you'll get the discount code and everything. Okay. Now, again, we are going to work from the free study guide today for the Praxis 5001. If you downloaded it, great. If not, I'm projecting it on my screen so you can just watch and download it later. Don't worry about trying to figure out how to download it. You'll get it again. Just follow along. All right. Now, I have a lot of people asking about different tests here. Some people talking about the 5713, 23, and 33. That's the Praxis Core. We're not talking about that today. I will have other webinars on that. We're talking about the 5001. Angelica, I've purchased the 7811 book. Will that book work? Yes, it will. Excuse me. I might just buy the math practice test for the 5003, Angelica. Don't buy the whole book because the math is slightly different than the 7813. The 7813 has a lot more scenarios. The 5003, which we'll go over today, is a little bit harder math. In my opinion, it's just straight math, not scenarios, but there's some slope in there. So you may just want to buy the practice test, but it's up to you. The 7811 will probably prepare you if you have a good grasp on it. Okay. How about if you're just teaching early childhood education? This will help you with the early childhood test, but we do have a specific early childhood test program. Okay. Can you purchase just the practice test? Yes, you can. There's a tab up in the top of my website that says just practice test, and you can. Here's the thing, and it's a good question. I forget who just said that. I got a lot of stuff coming up here. Can you just practice the practice at Lily? So Lily, yes, you can. Here's the thing, you guys. I want you to be careful about just doing practice tests and trying to memorize practice test questions. I don't know what test you're going to get on test day. It's a huge standardized assessment. This book covers so much information, but you're not going to get the practice tests in here are not exact to the test you're going to get on test day. And I want to make sure you understand the content really, really well so that it doesn't matter how you're asked about it on test day, that you're able to navigate that information. Now, the science and social studies, and I'll talk about that at the end, that's more content based, and that can just be random stuff asked of you. The language arts and reading and the math, those are concepts you really have to understand. So practice tests are good. And yes, I finally caved and made extra practice tests, but I want you to do more than just do practice tests. It's very important to understand the concepts, and we're going to go over them today. Okay. Okay. Mine is the first version of the purple book. First version is fine. This is the second edition. Both are awesome. This is just an updated edition. If you already have the first edition, don't buy another book. You're fine. If you want to buy the extra practice test, you can wait until after this is over. You'll get an offer code. Now, I do have my colleague in the chat. Her name is Yana. She is going to be posting the offer code in the chat, and she'll help answer some questions that you guys might have. I can't answer all questions when I'm in my presentation because I won't be able to see it, but she will help answer any questions. And if you guys know the answer, help each other out. How many different versions of the test are there? Okay, let's talk about test structure really quickly here. Tia, thank you for your question, because a lot of people don't understand how testing works. Okay, so very quickly, this test has 4 subtests. It's a huge test. Language arts and reading, that's one subtest. Mathematics, another subtest, social studies, and science. For this test, you take them all separately. The first time you take them all at once, but they are scored separately. So you could pass 3 out of the 4. Let's say you pass language arts, social studies, and science, and you still have to take the math. That's a normal thing for people. Not everybody gets all 4 at once. So if you pass 1, that's a victory. If you pass more than 1, that's great. If you pass them all, that's wonderful. However, you might have to take it multiple times. It is huge, okay? And I know it's expensive, and I hate that, but that's the way it is. Now, let me show you my presentation. This is going to help you a little bit better. So let me just show you my presentation here. Okay. Oops. Let me see. Where are we? Okay. So let's go over this right here. So we have basically 4 subtests. We have the 5002, which is the reading and language arts. We have the 5003, which is the math. We have the 5004, which is social studies. And we have the 5005, which is the science. Okay. Now, each one of these categories has its own smaller sections. Notice that in the 5002, there are 2 sections, reading and writing, speaking, and listening. In the 5003, there are 3 sections, numbers and operations, algebraic thinking, geometry. And the same thing goes for social studies, 3 content categories, U.S. history, geography, econ, and world history. And then science, 3, earth, space, life science, and physical science. Okay, let's go back up here let's just talk about the 5002. So we have 4 big subtests. Within those subtests, there are content categories. Each content category has its own silo of test questions. So think of this as test banks, item test banks, where questions are. Think of them as containers, okay? So this 5002 has 2 containers. The first one is reading. The second one is writing, speaking, and listening. And inside those containers, and they're digital containers, are hundreds of test questions that are developed by the testing company and other teachers and other people. When you go into test day, you get a form and you get randomly chosen items from these hundreds of items in these test banks. 47% will come from the reading, and 53% will come from the writing, speaking, and listening. The same thing with math. Think of math with 3 big digital containers. The first one has numbers and operations questions. The second one has algebraic thinking questions. And the third has geometry, measurement, data, probability, and stats. And inside there are hundreds of test questions. This is why test security is so important. They're not going to just have 30 questions that everybody takes over and over again, because what will happen? You're a teacher. By lunchtime, everybody knows the test, right? So big testing companies have these. These are called item banks. And when you go into test day, you get a form. Now, there could be Form A, Form B, Form C. There could be hundreds of different forms of the test. There could be just 3 forms of the test. I don't know. And when you take the test, you will get, based on these percentages here, 40% of your test will come from numbers and operations, 30% of your test will come from algebraic thinking, and 30% of your questions will come from geometry, measurement, data, probability, and stats, okay? And they'll come from these item banks randomly. So if you're trying to memorize test questions for test day, it's an exercise in futility. It's not going to happen. So that's why I want you to really understand what's going on in the test and what we're talking about so that you can be successful on test day. All right. So that is how that goes there. So let's go ahead and jump right into language arts and reading, or reading and language arts, I should say. And we will, once I'm done with that, I'll jump back to the room and we will go through any questions you have. Remember, my colleague Yana is in the chat. She just gave you guys an offer code for 20% off the products. And also she will help answer questions and you guys can help each other too. There are over almost 250 of you in the room right now. So I'm going to do my best to get to every question. Hopefully I'll answer a lot as I go. All right. So we're starting here with 5002, reading and language arts, arguably the most difficult because it's very scenario heavy. Meaning lots of scenario-based questions in the classroom, whereas social studies and science is just straight like questions about social studies, questions about science, really. The math is difficult. I'm going to show you a few math problems here, but the reading and language arts is very, very tough. Now, let me go here really quickly. In the study guide, I have some very, this is a free study guide, but there's a lot in here. You definitely want to make sure that you can go through some of this stuff here. And I've broken up a lot of stuff for the reading and language arts. These are some concepts you will find in the big study guide, but this is also something that's really important. So you should have a look at it, but I go much more in depth in the full study guide. This is the science of teaching reading and writing. And it's really important when we talk about the 5002. Okay. All right. So let's go back here. So we have the 5002, the biggest part of the test. This is 90 questions. Why? Well, because according to most, everyone should be a reading teacher. And if you are an elementary education teacher, your primary purpose is reading because there's a big fat test at the end of the year and all of your students need to pass it. It's really kind of difficult. And also, this reading and language arts goes with social studies and science. Obviously, you're going to read in social studies, you're going to read in science, you're going to write in science and social studies. So that's why there's such an emphasis on reading. Now, math is the next biggest here. 65 questions. And the math is not easy. It's tough. I just redid the math course for you guys for this particular webinar to make sure you guys new math course. And I went through all the math again and it's really, really tough. So we'll talk about it today. Don't worry. Then you have social studies and science. Those are a little bit less in terms of questions, a little bit fewer questions there. They are straight up content questions like, who were the Allied powers in World War II? What are the 3 branches of government in U.S. Government? Science. What are the 3 parts of cell theory? It's just straight up questions. So, and again, it could be anything in those content categories. All right. So let's start with and let me just erase this because it's getting a little confusing. Let's start with 5002, reading and language arts. The first part is reading. That's 38 questions. And the second part are all 3 of these, writing, speaking, and listening, 42%. Okay. Now, heavy, heavy, heavy on the foundational skills of reading here. We have got phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. Very, very important. These are listening and speaking skills only. Okay. So you do this orally and you listen. Okay. So listening and speaking. This has to do with sounds only. This is going to help you with the answers on the exam. Okay. Sounds only. This is the start of it. This is when we teach students how many sounds in the word bat. B-at. Break up the word bat into onset and rhyme. B-at. They're starting to just kind of understand what's going on inside of words. Then we have phonics. Phonics is spelling. This is letter sound correspondence. We have to actually look at the word to sound it out. With phonological and phonemic awareness, we don't. We can do it in the dark. We can do it without lights on. Are just talking about sounds. Phonics, now we're looking at the word and we're sounding it out based on the codes. This is code-based. Inside of our words, we have codes. For example, M-A-K-E. This A is long because of this E, right? That's a code. That's something that happens in English. That's phonics. We don't do that in phonological and phonemic awareness. We're just focusing on sounds. Fluency is the speed and ease at which students decode words and recognize words and move through now sentences and passages. So notice we went from individual sounds in words to the spelling of words to reading sentences and then later passages. Then we move into critical thinking about words and sentences and passages. And we get into comprehension, the essence of reading. We're forming pictures in our minds. We are evaluating information. We're predicting. We're summarizing. We're thinking. We're using metacognition. Very, very important. Notice that it was very systematic. We started with phonological and phonemic awareness. We moved up to phonics. We moved up to fluency and vocabulary. That's included in fluency. Then comprehension, and then metacognition. This is all critical thinking. This is all critical thinking and higher order thinking. So this is very important. Now, it's systematic. Remember this for the exam. It's systematic because we go through some layers here, right? We start with the easier stuff or the more foundational skills, and we move up through to more complex skills, right? It's also explicit, meaning we are focusing solely on each skill. I'm standing at the front of the room. I'm showing you how to do it. That is explicit instruction, teacher-led, teacher-guided. I'm showing you, I'm demonstrating, I'm modeling, right? Then we also are a little bit recursive in that we might go back and work on phonological phonemic awareness when we're in phonics just to fix up some skills, using previously learned skills to move to more complex skills. So reading is systematic, explicit, and recursive. Remember that. That is the science of teaching reading. Very important when it comes to any teaching reading exam, especially the 5002. All right, well, what does that look like on the exam? So this is coming from your free study guide that you downloaded with this presentation. You can see right here, I'm doing number 3. Right here, number 3. And of course, this is the free study guide. This is the full study guide. This is the big study guide here, the digital study guide. You guys have the free one. We're working from this one here, okay? So this is number 3. Let's go back. So I always like to work backwards. This has helped lots of people when it comes to the test. The reason being is that there are patterns in the answer choices and in the questions that I want you to be aware of. Some of you are brand new teachers and you haven't had the experience you need to answer some of these questions. So I always like to start with the end in mind. So let's have a look at the answer choices. And I have phonemic awareness, decoding, phonics, and structural analysis. Now, I know a lot more about this content than you do. I wrote the book and I've been studying this test for a long, long time. But when I look at the answer choices first, I can see some patterns. First of all, I know that phonics and decoding are the same. And you will too, once you read the study guide or watch my videos, okay? You would know that phonics and decoding are the same. Well, notice I can only have one correct answer here. If it had boxes next to it, like if A had a box, let me go ahead and delete this. So let's say A had a box and B had a box and C had a box and D had a box. And usually there's one more if it's choose all that apply. Then you wouldn't just have one answer. You would be able to choose multiple answers. And if it's a multiple answer one, you have to answer them all correct. There's no partial credit. Okay. So you have to answer them all correct. I know it's a bummer, but that's the way it goes. But I don't have multiple choices here or multiple correct answers here. I have just one correct answer. And if I know that decoding and phonics are the same, I can automatically in my mind, maybe not totally, but in my mind, I can think, it's probably not B and C, B or C, because decoding and phonics are the same thing. Decoding is sounding out the word. Phonics is sounding out the word based on spelling and codes in the word. So I'm going to cross off B and C. Then I have phonemic awareness, which is sounds only. And then I have structural analysis, which is breaking down the structure of the word based on prefixes, suffixes, and roots. Now, again, I know this content. You're just getting started on this content. But once you read the study guide and watch the videos, you're going to know this much better, okay? And you're going to be able to use these strategies much better. So right away, I'm down 50-50 to what the correct answer is. Further working backwards, let's go ahead and check out these bullets. Teach students to break down words by individual sounds. Teach students to focus on sounds. Notice I have sounds and sounds. That's going to bring me to phonemic awareness. I didn't even have to read this part up here. They do this a lot on the exam. There will be a big scenario. There will be big answer choices, and you get caught up in the scenario and you don't know which way to go. Answer choices first will help you. Not always. You're not going to be able to do this with every single question, but you'll see in the comments on my YouTube channel and things like that, that this has helped a lot of people. And I do this because I know how they build test items. Think like a test maker. That's what I tell people all the time. Think like a test maker. If I can only answer one answer choice correct, B and C are out. All right. And again, I got sounds and sounds. I know that's phonemic awareness. Let's just check the question stem to make sure. Based on the following instructional practices, what type of lesson? Well, this is phonemic awareness. A. All right. Now, when we move up, so those are the foundational skills, and there are a lot more of them, but phonemic awareness, phonics, phonological awareness, you're going to see a lot of that in the test. Then we move into the actual reading of text. We have literature and informational text. Remember, for this exam, we want a balance of literature and literary text, stories, poems, things like that, and informational text. Why? Because you have to read informational text to get a job, to, live and all of that. So we want to have a balanced approach. And students love informational text. They love books on science. They love books on social studies and things like that. So making sure we have a balanced approach to literacy. We want to focus on text structure, text features. So text structure is things like, is it expository? Is it compare and contrast? Is it opinionated or argumentative? That all matters. Then text features, are there headings? Are there underlined vocabulary words? Things like that. Comparing multiple texts, of course, you'll see some questions on the exam where students have to take a poem and match it up to another type of literary text, or even a literary text and an informational text. This is higher order. This is complex. Want to constantly be pushing students towards critical thinking. Very important. Text to self, showing students how to relate to the text, how to see themselves in a text. This has to do with multicultural literature, being culturally responsive, making sure our libraries and our classroom represent all students so students can see themselves in the literature. Also teaching students how to journal about what they're reading, to try to, just kind of get to know these stories and how do you feel about them personally, And then, of course, good word, evidence-based discussion. Now, you'll hear me say things like good word. Good words on the test are in the test specifications. They are in the standards that this test is based on. And the standards that this test is based on are the Common Core standards for English language arts. Now, even if you live in a state that doesn't have Common Core, they're still using the Common Core. They just name it something else. Like I live in Florida. They're called the Florida standards. Guess what? It's the Common Core with a few differences. It's a whole political thing, but basically when they adopted the Common Core, states could adopt it as long as they would get $100 million. Like I think the state of Florida got $100 million to adopt it. You could call it something else because there was some political pushback. People didn't like the word Common Core. They thought it was socialist. So governors adopted the standards, put a different name on them, but it's still based on the Common Core language arts standards. So Just know that. And the words and the skills in that group of English language arts standards for K through 6 has things like evidence-based discussion, text-based discussion, critical thinking, evaluating text, that kind of stuff. Those are good words. And so we want to be on the lookout for those in the answer choices because they will lead us to the right answer. And evidence-based discussion is requiring students to use evidence to support their claims. So you might ask the student, oh, really good information you just gave me. Where did you find that in the text? What page number is that on? Did the author say that? Where? Just having students back up what they're saying with evidence. It's the start of citing sources in order to make claims. We want to make sure they're making claims, but they're not just baseless claims. All right, so let's have a look at number 7. Now, this is a perfect example of how to work backwards. So we have our answer choices here, big, long answer choices. A lot of people get freaked out by this, but these are actually easier sometimes than the shorter answer choices. And we have the scenario here. All right, let's read the answer choices and see if we can narrow anything down and zero in on anything good. All right, allow students to partner up and read the text with a buddy. Okay. Now, new teachers, you might say, oh yeah, partner reading. I love it. I use it all the time. It's great. It's cooperative learning. It is. Allowing students to partner up is important. I'm going to put a little dot next to it. I'm not in love with it, and I'll tell you why in a second, but it's good. It's okay. B, reward the students with extra time in the computer lab for finishing the reading. Do we do this? Do we use a system of rewards? Do we use extrinsic rewards? Absolutely. I once got an entire high school class of like 80 kids, because I had, 5 different classes, to pass their biology EOC by just promising them chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A that they could have driven to themselves. They all passed their EOC. I had like some of the highest scores in the school by bribing my students because they worked really hard. They wanted those chicken sandwiches. I don't get it, but it worked, right? We do it. However, it's not sustainable. Rewarding students for reading and doing well, it does work, but it's not sustainable. We want to focus on intrinsic rewards, especially when it comes to reading. So I'm going to cross this off because it has extrinsic rewards focus. And on the test, it's not great. In life, it works. On the test, no. C, require the students to finish the reading for homework. Homework is typically a bad word on this exam. Okay. So stay away from it. 9 times out of 10, it's attached to a struggling student or motivating students, and homework does not motivate anybody, and it doesn't really help struggling students. Teachers have to work with students in small group and one-on-one and scaffold and differentiate. Having extra homework is not going to help. So I'm going to cross it off. Homework is a bad word. D, allow the students to self-select books from a standards-aligned group of informational texts. Good word, good word, good word. Think like a test maker. D looks the best. Why? Self-select books. Help students with autonomy. Help students with their interest. Allow them to choose what they want to read. This is always good stuff. Standards aligned. Oh my gosh, always. You see standards alignment or standards based or academic standards in an answer choice. It is 99.99999% of the time the correct choice because we want teachers to align their instruction to the academic standards. And of course, we have the term informational text. That's good too. But the self-select and standards aligned. Here's why it's important. Self-selecting books is good, but we need to make sure we're allowing students to self-select from a group of books that are approved and aligned to the standards. We don't want to just have random stuff because then they're not getting the information they need to be successful based on the standards, right? So that's why self-selecting books from a group of books that you've already pre-selected that are aligned to the standards is best. D's got everything. I'm done with A. It doesn't beat D. I'm going with it. And notice I didn't even have to read the question, but let's read the question to make sure. A teacher notices a few students are not motivated to read the current selection of a piece of informational text. What can the teacher do to motivate students to engage in the reading? Self-selecting books, giving students autonomy, always increases motivation. So D is the best answer. All right, that brings us to the next part of the exam, which is, or for the 5002, writing, speaking, and listening. It's going to be heavy on the writing process. Remember, the writing process is recursive. I talked about it before in the reading process. The writing process is not linear. You don't go from step 1 to step 10 and never go back and fix and all of that. You always go back and fix. You always revisit your writing. We have to teach students that recursive writing, going back, fixing, editing, that is just as important as the first draft and all of that. Writing can always be fixed. Audience awareness, this is very important. This is a good word on the writing, and you'll see this a lot in the Common Core Language Arts Standards. Audience, purpose. Those are the things that really should impact student writing. Who are you writing to and what is your purpose? Then you can decide, am I going to write an expository piece? Am I going to write an opinionated piece? Am I going to write a cause and effect? Who am I writing to? Am I going to use very sophisticated language? Am I going to use first person narrative? Am I going to use third person narrative? All of that depends on the audience and purpose. You will have a little bit on grammar and mechanics, not much. I cover pretty much all the grammar and mechanics like that elementary ed students would need in the book. So you will understand that. And then a very small amount are the presentation skills, the speaking and presenting skills. You probably have 1 or 2 questions there. All right, let's have a look at what that looks like here. All right, use the following paragraph to answer the question. Okay, we're not going to read this yet. Let's go ahead and go here. A, you use the term American alligator a lot. Try combining sentences to give the paragraph varied language. Okay. So I have quotes here. I can see that this is probably a teacher talking. Whenever there are quotes, that's usually either a student talking or a teacher talking on the exam. And the word varied language is very important in the writing portion because we want to talk to students about varying their sentences to make it more interesting. We want to get them away from robotic language. I like A. The only thing I don't like about A is that it doesn't have anything positive in it yet. When we give feedback, we want to be very specific, which this is specific and meaningful. But there's nothing positive here. I mean, you use the term American alligator a lot. It's not positive. We want to give them a little positive and then show them where they can do better. So A is okay, not in love with it, but I'm going to leave it. B, good job. Keep up the great work. Absolutely not. This is not feedback. And I tell people this all the time. I had a lot of students when I taught college. I taught in the College of Education, and I would give them very detailed feedback on their writing because they had to write papers and all of that. And they would say to me, oh, thank you so much for the feedback. I just turned in a paper to my professor and all she did was put 100% at the top of it, which everybody loves 100%. I'm not saying that's not great, but without telling the student what they did good or bad or what they need to work on, you're not helping the student. This is not feedback. Don't do this. I love this because of XYZ. Keep doing that. Here's something you could work on. That's how you do feedback, okay? C, consider using a closing statement at the end. Okay, this is okay feedback. A is definitely better because it's more specific. C is okay. I'm not crossing it off, but I don't love it. A is still my number 1 right now. B, your writing does a great job describing your knowledge about the American alligator. Consider deleting sentence 4 so it doesn't take away from your overall theme. Now, D has all the situations here. We have the writing does a great job. So we've got a little positive. Then we have a little place where the student could do better and specific. What would doing that help? This helps the student become a better writer. So D looks like it's my answer. Let's go ahead and look at this part here, continuing to work backwards. What would be appropriate feedback to share with the student who wrote the paragraph? All right. So, let's look at number 4 here. Other apex predators are lions and tigers. Well, this student is talking about the American alligator the whole time, and then it jumps to predators are lions and tigers. Just to check, D is actually the right answer. Now, A works. You can see how the American alligator is a reptile. The American alligator is an apex predator. An apex predator is a predator at the top of the food chain. Notice they say the American alligator, the American alligator. It is true that they use it a lot. And combining those sentences would give varied language. But D is a better piece of feedback because it is specific and meaningful. There's a little bit of praise in there. And then there's a place where the student would need to fix something. So D is a better answer there. Okay. All right. Let me go back to here and see what your questions are. Okay. let's see. There's so many people in here. I'm going to try to talk about this. All right. So some people are talking about online courses. I do have an online course for this exam as well. Let me go ahead and share that with you really quickly before we move on to anything else. So here's what my online courses look like. These courses come with the digital study guide. So you get the full digital study guide, which a lot of online courses do not have study guides. This is, you can see you download the whole thing here. I've separated them out so you get each section of the book in different parts of there. And then you have a full video of me explaining all the skills. You can see this one's 26 minutes, even more videos here. Then there's a quiz, which is here. And you go through and you do the quiz. And then I have a video explaining each quiz question. Then I do it again for this, literature and informational text, all of that. I draw on the screen just like I'm doing today. If you like what I'm doing, you'll love it in here. Then a quiz, then an explanation video. So we do that through the whole thing, and then the practice tests here. So the online course follows the study guide. You can see that for the 5003, which we're going to do next, it's a little different. That's more doing the math focused. So each video is actually me going through every single math question in the book. So, and I have these little presentations here that you can download the slides to and kind of do them on your own. They're the same from in the book, but I like to blow them up like this so you can let me go to this one. You can do the question there. And so I just go through each example question in the book, and I do that in every single video here. And then at the end of the math, I go through each practice test. You can download the practice test. They are the same from in the book. And then I go through every single question in the practice test, number 1 through 10, 11 through 20, 21 through 30. So there's actually a book that you follow along with. And all of these downloads are the same as the book. I just separate them out so that you can download them separately. Some people like that. Some people just work in their book. But all of our online courses come with the digital study guide, and the online course, let me go back up here, are up here. If you go to 5001, you can buy the entire course, or, you can uncheck these if you don't want the extra practice test. You can buy the full course or just one section. If you've passed everything, but like you need math, you can just buy that. And of course, you can buy extra practice tests as well. Like I said, we do have extra practice tests. And when you buy them all together, you get a bundle. And then of course, you have the coupon that we've got going on here. So we do have really awesome online courses. They are super comprehensive, tons of video, hours and hours of video for every single practice test question, every single skill. If you struggle with math, I highly recommend the math course for sure. If you buy the entire course, you get everything. You get the language arts and reading, you get the math, social studies, and science, and they all come with the study guide. Do not buy both. You do not need to buy the study guide and the course. And if you've already purchased the study guide and you want to get the course, we'll apply this price to the course. So if you purchase this on Amazon and you're like, oh, I want the online course, we will send you just email us proof of purchase, and we will send you an offer code that will take the price of the book off the course, because you get the book with the course. All right, there's a lot of questions here. Let's see, Marie. Let's see. Anybody have any questions? Somebody saying, I missed my math by 5 points and science by 1. Okay, some people, that's what happens. Sometimes you pass everything except 1 and you're so close. So all you have to do is fix up those math skills, and we're going to talk about them today. What if I already purchased the book and could really use the online courses for writing and math? Do I still have to purchase the entire thing? No, you can purchase by sections. Everything you can purchase by sections. You can purchase the book digitally by sections, and you can purchase the courses by sections as well. But when it comes to the book, if you need more than 1, so if you need 2, buy the whole book. It's just less expensive that way. Okay. Because it's $29.99 for each section of the book. If you buy each section, it's $29.99, $29.99, $29, you're paying too much. So I just want you to pay for either the full book at $42.99 or one section at $29.99. Okay. Do you recommend taking the full 5001 all at once or one section at a time? Here's what I recommend. I think you should take the whole thing the first time. The reason being is that you might get all of it that first time, and then you don't have to take anything else. Or you might get like 3 or 2, and then you only have to focus on 2. I recommend doing it all at once. Then if you're too overwhelmed and you've passed, like, let's just say you passed the science or something, then if you really don't like how big it is, then take them one at a time. But I do make sure that you take it all at once. Okay. Somebody's saying, I would like to take the online course, but I can't get the link. We will link it up in the email, but it's on my website. But just wait for there's the offer code in here. Yana will put it in again. Make sure you do the offer code because it's going to take it's 20% off. It's going to take a significant amount off. Okay, let's see here. Let's go into the math. Is the Praxis content similar to the GACE? Yes, Jazz. Thank you for asking. GACE and Praxis are made by the same company, ETS. It's just that Georgia wants to have their name on it, so it's GACE, but it's the same. I purchased the whole book through Amazon. How can I get the study guide? If you purchase the book on Amazon, you have the study guide. That's this. So don't buy the study guide. If you want the online course, you can send us proof of purchase and we will send you an offer code to apply it to the online course. How long should I review before taking the 5001? Good question. Okay. It's a big test. Marie, thank you for your question. I would break each section down. I would probably take a couple days for each section. Some people need several weeks to prepare. Other people don't. It just depends. But I would break it up by section and really just work through each one. If you get the online course, it's broken up really well. And also the book is too. Notice there are tabs here. I might take just a week for this one or like 4 days, 2-3 days. It depends on what you want. Then move to math, then science and social studies. Or you can just have maybe you're really good at social studies and you just review that real quick and you're like, I got that. I don't need to spend too much time on that. But math, maybe you need more. It just depends on your skills. It's hard to say. All right. Somebody's saying they can't hear me, but people can hear me, right? Let me know in the comments. It sounds like everybody's okay here. Okay. So people are asking about FOIL and math questions. So that is going to cue me into math. Let's go to math next. All right. So let me share screen. All right. So let's move on to math. And let me erase this because I was talking about those silos earlier. Okay. So math has 3 main content categories: numbers and operations, algebraic thinking, and geometry, measurement, data, probability, and stats. All right. So the biggest portion of it is numbers and operation, but please keep in mind that sometimes when you're taking a geometry test question, it's also testing your algebra. I'll show you what that means in a minute. The math on this exam is pretty tough. If you struggle with math, I recommend the online course because I go through it, each question, and then you can understand exactly why it is what it is. Also, please look at the answer explanations in the correct answers, even when you get things correct, because sometimes you guess and you're like, oh, I got it, but you don't know why you got it. So look at the answer explanations. They're very detailed for all of it, but especially the math. Okay. So let's go through the first part. This is numbers and operations. This is place value, order of operations, exponents, fractions, decimals, percents, and proportions. You can solve so many problems with proportions, and you will see proportions assessed on this numbers and operations section, algebraic thinking section, and the geometry section. Okay. So let's go ahead and have a look at, that was loud. Let's go ahead and have a look at a question that would come from the numbers and operations. Specifically, this is a proportion question. So we have Ryan works at a sandwich shop and can make 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. At this rate, how many sandwiches can he make in a 4-hour shift? Okay, so we have the term rate here. When you see the term rate, we are talking about a ratio or a proportion. So in questions like this, we want to make sure that we set up a proportion. So 2 fractions that equal one another. So Ryan works at a sandwich shop and can make 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. So that rate is 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. Notice I have sandwiches over minutes. So I always talk about this in terms of matchy-matchy. So if I have sandwiches over minutes on one side, I need to have sandwiches over minutes on the other. Don't mix them up. Whatever's on the top on one side has to be on the top on the other, and whatever's on the bottom on one side has to be on the bottom of the other. Could I do minutes over sandwiches, minutes over sandwiches? Yes, but it just has to match. In this case, I'm going with the way it's written in the word problem. So it says 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. Sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes. At this rate, how many sandwiches, so I don't know X, I'm not sure how many sandwiches, can he make in a 4-hour shift? Notice I have to do a little conversion here. I have 4 hours, but I have 50 minutes here. Now I could convert this 50 minutes to hours, but it's going to give me a decimal, and I don't want to work with decimals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this 4 hours times 60, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So 60 times 4 is going to be 240. So that goes on the bottom. Now notice I have sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes. With a proportion, we're going to cross multiply and solve, and I get 50x, because 50 times x is 50x equals 8,400. Now, I always like to look at my answer choices. You know, I'm always kind of looking at the answer choices here. Notice I have 50 will go into 8,400 because this ends in a 0 and this ends in a 0. So I'm not going to have any decimals. So, and I can look at my answer choices and see that there are no decimals. So I'm on the right track here. I just always want to constantly be looking. To isolate this x, so this is number sense, but now we're working in algebra here because we're trying to solve for a variable. I'm going to divide by 50, and I get x equals, just checking really quick with my calculator, 168. He can make 168 sandwiches in a 4-hour shift. That's a pretty good sandwich maker. If I owned a sandwich shop, I would probably hire Ryan. That's a lot of sandwiches. So that's how you do it. Another key thing here, in a proportion, it will give you 3 out of the 4 things you need. Notice I have sandwiches, minutes, and then here time, or sandwiches, time, and time. I'm looking for sandwiches, the rate. So this 4th thing is what I'm solving for. And that's what I did with the proportion. All right. There are other ways to do it. You could take a shortcut. And if you just looked across here and said, how many times does 50 go into 240? And you could multiply the same thing by 35 and get it. I like to do the long way when I'm explaining math so that you understand. I do proportions like this for almost all math exams I ever take, and it helps me so much. So matchy-matchy, sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes, cross multiply, solve for x, and you will get the correct answer. You can use this method for so many things, all right? All right, now we get into algebraic thinking. So this is expressions versus equations. Expressions do not have an equal sign. Equations do have an equal sign. Linear relationships, formulas for unknown quantities, proportions again, verbal statements, turning them into algebra, very important there. Let's have a look at a standard algebra question. So evaluate the equation for b equals -4. So anywhere I see -4, I'm going to plug that in for b. Now notice here, we have a bunch of negatives. They do this all the time on math exams, whether it's this math exam, Praxis Core, ACT, SAT, they'll constantly be messing with you with the negatives. Because in order to get the correct answer here, you have to be cognizant of the negatives and use PEMDAS. Let me show you what I mean. So anywhere where I see -4, or anywhere where I see b, I'm going to input -4. So I have a negative and then I have a b. I'm just going to do this. -4 squared minus 3 -4. Okay. Now, why is PEMDAS important here? We're in algebra. PEMDAS was with numbers and operations, but notice they're using both skills here. So if we have PEMDAS, and you always want to use PEMDAS when solving, we start with parentheses. This is order of operations. We start with parentheses. Well, we do have parentheses here, but it's more to just organize these things. We don't have any operations within the parentheses. If we had something like this, -4 plus 3 squared, right? Let's just say we had that. We would do this operation before we did this exponent. But in this case, we don't have that. We just have some parentheses organizing our inputted -4 there. So it's okay. We don't have to there's nothing we can do inside the parentheses. It's already been solved. So that's done. Check. Next, exponents. Do we have an exponent? Yes, we do. We have -4 times -4, or -4 squared. Well, what's -4 times -4? +16. Bring that down. Be careful. And then minus, and now I don't have any more exponents here, so I could just go ahead and do this part of it. I have -3 times -4, right? Because this is a -3 and it's on the outside. What's -3 times -4? That's going to be a +12. Okay, so we've done exponents and we've done multiplication. Now, we're still in multiplication a little bit here because this negative needs to go into this parentheses here. -16 plus 12 equals -4. Why is PEMDAS so important? That's B. Because let's just say, let's go back, and they do this all the time, you guys, on math. Let's just say that we decided before we did the exponent, let's say we moved into multiplication first. And I went, okay, negative times a negative, +4 squared minus 3 to -4. Okay, and we'll do this. Okay, that's 12. Oh, 16 plus 12. I get a very different answer here, don't I? I get 28D. And notice they anticipated my mess up on PEMDAS, and I got the answer D. And it's incorrect. That's why you have to make sure that you do the order of operations, because when you do that, you do the exponent first, which gives you a positive. Then you attach the negative, which gives us a -16 plus 12, which leads us to the -4, which is a very different answer than 28. Okay, so be careful. When you see negatives, organize it, go slow, make sure that you keep that straight. All right. And then we have geometry, measurement, and data. This is a big one. We're going to have everything from 1, 2, 3-dimensional figures, from classifying them to finding surface area, regular area, volume. We have perimeter area, volume, circumference. You will have some questions on circles. Circles can be kind of anxiety inducing. We have units of measure, cups versus pints, quarts, gallons, meters versus kilometers, things like that. They don't specifically talk about central tendency in the specs, but I add it here because it is a part of statistics. So they don't mention mean, median, and mode specifically in the test specifications, but it's really important that you know it just in case. Of course, you're going to have to evaluate graphs, charts, and tables, probability, and again, proportions. Proportions are constant throughout. Let's have a look at what this might look like. So what is the perimeter of a square with an area of 49 square inches? So we know the area, we need to find the perimeter. Well, if it's a square, that's one hint. Oh, that's a bad, sorry. Let me go back. If it's a square, and this is not a perfect square, obviously, we know that all sides are equal. So we have a clue. Be on the lookout for the clues here. And if it's an area of 49 square inches, that means that the bottom is the same as the side. Remember, area is base times height. So if it's a square, the base and the height are identical, right? Well, what would we do? We could take 49 and square it, or we could just know our math facts. 7 times 7 is 49. 7 times 7 is 49. Well, if the bottom is 7 and if the base is 7 and the height is 7, then this height is 7 and this is 7. If we add all of those up, we get 28 inches, or 4 times 7. Be careful. Clues all throughout. Let's have a look at another one. This one is probability. Ellie's food truck currently serves 4 main dishes and 3 side dishes, and each meal consists of 1 main dish and 1 side. Next week, she is adding 1 main dish and 2 sides to the menu. How many more combinations of meals will her customers be able to get with the new additions? Okay, questions like this tend to freak people out. All we're doing is figuring out how many combinations there are. And they're not going to make this too complicated on you. So first, we need to figure out how many combinations there are in the original menu. Then we need to figure out how many combinations are in the new menu and figure out the difference between the two. And that's how many more people will get in the new menu. So let's go with menu 1. Menu 1 has 4 main dishes and 3 side dishes, and you only get one of each. So that's 4 times 3 equals 12. That's how many combinations you can do. It's as easy as that. Now, next week, she's adding a main dish. So the 4 becomes a 5. So this is menu 2. So the 4 becomes a 5 and 2 side dishes, and the 3 becomes a 5. So now they have 25 different combinations. Well, 25 minus 12 is what? 13. The new menu has 13 more combinations. Okay. All right. So go to my thing and see where. Now keep in mind, I'm just doing a few problems. This is huge. I would be here all day to go through the entire math. It's a lot. Okay. Math was never my strong subject. Okay. Nikki, thank you for saying that, because that is a story you are telling yourself. Math can be your strongest subject. You just have to practice it. Here's something I've learned. I used to think math was not my strongest subject. And then I started writing books about math. I had to do it. I started off as an ACT coach, and I could do the English and language arts like crazy. And the reading, I was like, boom, boom. But they needed the math too. Like they weren't just coming to me for reading and language arts for the or for English for the ACT. I needed the math and the science. I was a science teacher, so I was fine in the science. So I started kind of practicing the math before the kids came to the sessions, right? Well, I got really good at math. Why? Because I started doing math more often. What we tend to do, and this is what your students tend to do too, we like what we're successful in. If we're successful in English and language arts, we like it more and we think, oh, I'm stronger in that. I'm this brain. I'm right brain instead of left brain. We all use all of our brains all the time. No one is a math person. No one is an English language arts person. It's just that you've been successful in one, so you like one more. Try to change that thinking. I'm not great at math yet, but I will be. And you will be if you practice it. And if you keep thinking that way, it will hold you back in math. So you are good at math. You just need a little practice. That's it. Okay, so Jasmine's talking about the calculator on the 5003. Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, I'm using a handheld calculator because for me to be clicking on the calculator during a webinar or during my online course is super annoying. Like you'd be like, oh my God, because you mess up, you kind of click on it with the mouse. What I recommend you doing to practice for the online calculator for the 5003, and yes, you do get one, but it's online. You do not get a handheld. I think there might be some accommodations if you have impairment in your hands or something, but you have to apply for accommodations on this test. You can get them if you have a medical situation, but most people will have to use the computer calculator, which if you've taken a test like that, it can be kind of tedious. So what I've done to practice with it is most computers come with an on-screen calculator. So pull that up and have it up on your screen. So even if you're working in the book, like let's say you got the physical book and you're working through the practice test, try using the online calculator when you do it. It'll just prepare you better. Because if you're going click, 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 and then all of a sudden it's test day and you're like, and you're messing up, it could hold you back. So I'm just trying to give you guys the best advantage. If you don't have one for your computer, you can download it in the Google Play Store for free. And just know that there are certain ways in which you have to click it. Like to find the square root, like I told you with 49, on some calculators, you hit square root 49 or you hit 49 square root. It just depends. There are calculator tutorials before you start the test. Most people just click through them. Others you can look up right now. There is a calculator policy. We'll try to link that up in the email going out. But really what you need to do is pull up that online calculator from your computer, put it on your screen, and when you work through the math, use it. I'm kind of cheating with this. Okay. You're not going to get this. It's a 4 function. It's like the easy peasy one. You're not going to get all these bells and whistles on it. Okay. Let's see here. Can you review the probability question again, please? Yes. And I think somebody asked for, Somebody asked for the first math question too, I think. Let me just see. How similar are your purple tests to the real tests? I just said that I use the test specs and the standards to write them. I don't know what test you're going to get. I use the specs are my Bible when I write these books. So I make sure I cover every single skill and I try to hit you with as many questions in that skill as I can. But I don't know what you're getting on test day. Those tests are secure and we can't, you shouldn't even be discussing them once you see the questions. Just take my advice on that. So, it's more about the skill than it is the questions. If you're passing them really well, and one of you said that, I think it's Olivia, I'm passing yours consistently, that's a good sign. I say if you can pass these with a 75 to 80%, you're ready for test day. Let me go back over the two questions. Somebody wanted number one done, and somebody wanted the probability question done. Okay, I'm going to go back and just take a look at those. Okay, let me just, because somebody, I don't like to move on unless people have it. So let me just go over that. All right, so this is the probability question here. So let me go ahead and just talk about that really quickly. This is considered probability. All right. Now, there are other probability questions, but this is considered probability because we have combinations and we're trying to figure out combinations. All right. So Ellie's food truck serves 4 main. So we have 4 main dishes and 3 side dishes, and you get one of each. You get a main and a side. Next week, she's adding a main and 2 sides to the menu, so you get more choices. So to find out the first menu, that's just 4 times 3. There are 12 different ways you can get this menu. If you get 1 main and 1 side dish, you get 12 different combinations out of these 4 and 3. Now, you could on test day go, okay, let's say a main dish is a hamburger, a main dish is a piece of fish, chicken, whatever. You could have them all lined up and then you could go, okay, fish and potatoes, fish and rice, but that's going to take forever. Just do the shortcut. 4 times 3, 12 combinations. But then the following week, she's adding to the menu. This 4, we're now going to have 5 because she's adding a main dish. So the 4 becomes a 5. And she's adding 2 side dishes. So this 3, which is the side dish, becomes a 5. Now, instead of 4 times 3, we have 5 times 5. So the new menu is going to give you 25 combinations. Then it says, how many more combinations of meals will her customers be able to get with the new menu? Well, now they get 25. They already had 12. So that means they get 13 new combinations with the new menu. All right. Okay. And I think somebody else wanted the proportion again. Let's do it again. Okay. One more time. All right. So now that we know about proportions, remember, we have this word rate. If it says ratio, if it says rate, if it says similar figures, you can use proportions. And I go through those extensively in the book and on the online course. All right. The online course, just telling you guys, I just updated it. It took me about 3 weeks of editing and fixing and really working through the math. So if you struggle, I highly recommend it. Even if you just buy that and you just get the study guide for everything else, that would be helpful. All right. So we see rate. When I do rate, whenever I see rate, automatically I set a proportion. That's 2 fractions equal to one another. Because what you're saying is 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes is the same as this many sandwiches in 4 hours. I do the same thing with my books. Sometimes I'll look at my books on Amazon and it'll say, let's just say, okay, I sold 100 books in 5 days. How many books will I sell in 20 days? You're predicting. It's a prediction based on what's happening, right? So Ryan makes 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. Sandwiches over minutes. At this rate, how many sandwiches in a 4-hour shift? Remember, I need to change that to minutes because I got minutes here. It's got to be the same. You can't have hours and minutes. We got to have sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes. How did I get the 240? I multiplied 4 times 60. Because there are 60 minutes in an hour, 4 times, 240. Don't worry about the big numbers. You've got a calculator on your screen. Again, you could do this. You could say, all right, if these are equal to one another, here's a shortcut, you guys. I'll show you the shortcut. 240 divided by 50 here. How many times does, actually you get a decimal there. I don't want you to do that. I'm not going to do that. If you're good at math and you want to do that, that's fine. I'm not doing that. It's 2 times 4.8. Yeah, it works. It works. All right, let me just, fine. I'll show you the shortcut. Hang on. How many times does 50 go into 240? Okay, so you could take 240 divided by 50 and you get 4.8. So you would multiply 35 by 4.8. If you did that, you would get 168. But I don't like that because I like to do the cross multiply and solve. But you can do it any way you want, okay? To really get it, all you do, because these are equal, we can cross multiply and solve for x. So 50 times x is 50x equals, what is 35 times 240? 35 times 240 equals 8,400. I can see I have zeros here. It looks like it's going to be nice and even. I got even Stevens over in my answer choices. Now I use algebra, solving for x. How do I get the x alone, isolated, so that I end up with x equals? I do that by dividing by 50. Crosses out. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Divide by 50. 8,400 divided by 50 equals 168. X equals 168. A. Okay. All right. So let me go back here. Stop sharing. Okay. Can we watch this webinar later? Yes. You're going to get an email. You can watch it all later. No problem. Okay. How do I get your online study guide for math? It's on our website. Under study guides, you can click 5003. It will come up. But wait till we send you an email because there's a coupon code, or you can get it here. There's a coupon code. Yana will put it in the messages again. Okay. I can use all the help I can get for social studies. Okay, Katie, we're about to do social studies now. Let's talk about social studies. There are an infinite number of questions they can ask you for social studies. In fact, I was just recording a video today on social studies where I was talking about how the specs start with, for world history, they start with ancient civilizations and then they move right to 20th century developments. That's what the specs say, the test specifications. That's the document that governs the test. It tells you what's on the test. It tells you what content is on the test. It doesn't tell you the questions. It tells you, what areas. Well, world history is vast. Even the ancient civilization topic is vast. Now, there are patterns. There are certain things you're going to want to know, but there can be so many things covered. And again, I don't know what test you're going to get. That's why it's important to understand themes, timelines, kind of overarching things where you can then eliminate. So for example, if they're talking about World War II and they speckle in some Civil War stuff in the answer choices, that that's the wrong time period, that's the wrong war. All right. So understanding kind of bigger chunks is going to help you, but it's hard. Social studies is a tough one. But let's go over the content categories so you can kind of understand. And then you can use my textbook. I cover everything that's in the specs, but they might ask it to you in a different way. For example, let me just give you one. And I actually beefed up this section of the link or the social studies in the book. Let's say it's about, the United States and slavery. Let's say it's a slavery question. And you've maybe looked it over, but there's a question about Nat Turner, the Nat Turner Rebellion. Okay. And that's when Nat Turner got a bunch of other enslaved people to rise up against their slave owners and killed a bunch of slave owners. Okay. You may not know who Nat Turner. And that may have messed you up, but it's still about that section. So that's why it's important to understand the themes and the main players. Okay. And so, I'm going to go over that now, but it's just kind of an example of that's a specific little detail of the slavery part of the test. And it's covered in the specs, but that one very important piece of history, the Nat Turner Rebellion, Nat Turner was a literate, enslaved person who rose up and got a bunch of people to follow him. And it really had an impact on policy in the United States. And it showed kind of the atrocities of slavery and why it should be abolished. It was really important in the high school social studies section. It's dug into much more deeply. In the elementary, it's not as much. So, but you need to understand those main players. Okay. Does the second edition have more on the social studies? It does. It has some extra practice tests, but if you want, you can also get the extra practice tests for social studies. Tracy is saying, I can't memorize all that content. It's hard to memorize all the social studies content. I would just focus on themes rather than memorizing anything. Okay. If I have the 5901 book, will the practice test for 5001 help me? Yes. The 5003, 04, and 05 will help you with the 5901 for sure. This is the same test minus the language arts. All right, let's go over into the social studies section of this exam. Sorry, my brain is malfunctioning. We're getting to the end here, guys. Okay, so there are always 3 sections to this exam. We have U.S. history, government, and citizenship. This is going to be all about, this one's a big one. You can see 27 questions, 45% of the test is U.S. history. So this is going to be everything from indigenous populations in the United States before European exploration. European exploration, what European countries came over to the New World. Why did they come over to the New World? What did they do once they were here? Also, the American Revolution, the Civil War, founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. Government, 3 branches of government, citizenship, all of that. You're going to cover the U.S. in World War I, the U.S. in World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, the Harlem Renaissance. Let me think. The space race. I mean, you guys, it's a lot. Okay. So we want to just be thinking in themes here. Of course, the U.S. history part has a lot to do with the colonization of the U.S., the use of slavery in the U.S., the slave trade in the U.S., the moving across to the West Coast and displacing indigenous people. The good, the bad, and the ugly of U.S. history is covered on this test, as it should. And then geography, anthropology, and sociology is the second piece. It's heavy on the geography, but of course, anthropology and sociology are also in there. Some of the geography concepts can be quite tough because you might not have thought about an isthmus in a long time or a archipelago since you were in elementary school. So you may want to brush up on that. And then, of course, they combine economics and world history, which is crazy to me because it's like huge. I mean, world history, come on. And then economics. The economics is basic. We're talking elementary education. So we're talking supply and demand, opportunity cost, some of the more simple economics. And the world history is going to be heavy on ancient civilizations and how they influence the new world. And then, of course, 20th century developments. Like I said before, it jumps from ancient civilizations, Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, things like that. And then it jumps to 20th century. But in the online course, I go over a lot more than just that, just to make sure. Okay. All right. Let's have a look at what U.S. government and citizenship is. So again, we have European exploration and the displacement of indigenous populations, which led to the American Revolution. Major events, Civil War, westward expansion, key documents. We talked about that. Branches of government and citizens' responsibilities. That's just touching on the main aspects of it. And then inside those, we have even more. Let's have a look at this. So notice it's just straight up content. So following the Louisiana Purchase, Thomas Jefferson ordered which of the following tasks to be completed? Okay, let's talk about the Louisiana Purchase. So the Louisiana Purchase was a big swath of land in between where the colonies were, so on that east coast of the United States, all the way over into the middle part of the United States and up to the top near Canada. It was purchased from the French for $15 million. Quite a bargain if you think about all that land. And it was touted as a wonderful thing because they didn't have to fight for it. They just got it. Thomas Jefferson touted it as, oh, look at us. We purchased the land rather than killed a bunch of people for the land. But guess who was on the land? Indigenous populations. and tribes. And so along with purchasing it, then we further, and I say we because I'm from European descent, but the European colonists further displaced indigenous populations. So it was a good thing in terms of the colonists. They got more land moving westward, right? Wayward expansion, which was a big part of it, but it displaced many, many indigenous populations and led to the Trail of Tears, which I'm sure you remember from school, where indigenous populations were meant to leave their homes and pushed off into reservations, and the trek was grueling and a lot of people died and it was very awful. But it was purchased for $15 million. Once it was purchased, Thomas Jefferson ordered exploration of the new territory. Now, Reconstruction, here is where your timeline could be helpful here. Reconstruction happened after the Civil War. That's when we kind of rebuilt the southern states in a new way, and we were hoping that, slavery was over and that free people would be able to move around and live their lives. And of course, we know we had to come a long way from that. But Reconstruction was after the Civil War. The Louisiana Purchase was way before the Civil War. We're talking Revolutionary War time. And the start of the United States. So B would be out. Implementation of Indian removal process. You might want it to say that, but really right after the Louisiana Purchase was purchased, or that part was purchased, Thomas Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark out to explore the new territory. Here's something else you want to think about it. The colonists thought it was their divine right to take over all of the United States and move westward, wayward expansion, okay? Manifest destiny. It's all the same thing. Manifest destiny, wayward expansion, westward expansion. And they did that through exploration. And when they started exploring, they found gold in certain places. And where we had built treaties with indigenous people, like we said, okay, we're going to sign a treaty. This is the Laramie Treaty. We're going to sign a treaty with you. You leave this part of the area in the Louisiana Purchase. You go to the Black Hills. That's your new home. We won't bother you there, right? The United States says this to the indigenous people. And so the indigenous people go and they move to the Black Hills. And then during the exploration of the new territory, guess what's found in the Black Hills? Gold. And so the United States goes, oh, yeah, you remember that treaty that we signed with you about the Black Hills and how that's your home? That's not your home anymore. There's gold there. We're taking it. So this was a constant thing going on in the United States at the time. And so, and they felt they were justified by God. And so if you think you're justified by God, then you're going, right? So this is called Manifest Destiny, exploration of the new territory. The Louisiana Purchase was the start of that. We were colonized on the East Coast and then moved westward after the Louisiana Purchase. And then the first U.S. Census, this is way later. Too much in the future, okay? Making C the best answer. All right, let's do a little geography. Now we're moving into geography, anthropology, and sociology. We're going to talk about world geography concepts, the world in terms of spatial terms, physical and human systems. You'll get a lot about agriculture in this part. Cultures, people, migration, and settlements. Let's have a look here. So this is one with the world and spatial terms. Using the map, which country is at 60 degrees north and 120 degrees east? So remember, longitude are the lines that go long ways. Latitude are the lines that go like a ladder. So if we're going 60 degrees north, which is here, and 120 degrees east, basically take our fingers. We show students how to do that. Boop. Absolute location right there in Russia. So you have to know where Russia is. You have to know your continents. You have to know your latitude and longitude, and you have to know how to find it. So that one seems like it's kind of easy, but remember, this is an elementary education test. So you're being tested on elementary education subjects. And that might be like, oh, that's easy, but it's actually not, because some of these concepts you haven't thought about in a long time. Like this one here. When was the last time you thought about the Louisiana Purchase? I mean, not since elementary or middle school, probably, unless you're a history buff, which you would probably know a lot more about it than I do. And I do say that a lot. I work really hard on the social studies, but there are people out there who are experts in social studies. I am not. I am an expert in test prep and what you need to know to pass the social studies. I always hate doing social studies live because someone will say, well, that's not true. This actually happened. History is interpreted a lot of different ways, as we see recently. But I'm telling you what's on the exam, and that's what's on the exam. Okay. All right, let's go to world history and economics. Again, two giant content categories smushed together. Okay, we are going to focus on ancient civilization, Mesopotamia, Indus Valley, Chinese civilizations, Egyptian civilizations, the Romans, the Greeks, and how they impacted our society today. Really interesting stuff. There's a few documentaries on Netflix that are really cool if you're trying to get better at this kind of thing. There are a few really interesting docs on Netflix and stuff. So you could just spend an afternoon kind of brushing up on some of that. I find them very interesting. I like history a lot. Not my content area completely, but I love it. I love to learn about it. Then they jump to the developments of the 20th century. I just find that interesting that they just go from ancient civilizations, boom, to the 20th century. On the online course and in the book, I actually cover a little more in there. Then we have cross-cultural comparisons. That's very important. And we also do that with the ancient civilizations to the 20th century, because a lot of what happens here impacts a lot of what happens today. It's very interesting. Then it moves into basic economics, supply and demand, scarcity, choice, that kind of stuff. We're not getting into a lot of crazy economic stuff. It's for the kids. They're learning just about the economy, interest rates, things like that, just kind of basic stuff. And then populations, resources, and impact. And I can see why they smush world history and economics together, because this happening all over the world, populations, impact, war, resources, either abundant or scarce, does impact the economy, obviously. So they are talking about that. Let's have a look at a question that you might see. Which of the following civilizations was the first to use irrigation? All right, let's talk about this. First of all, Pangaea is not a civilization. That's when the Earth's land masses were all stuck together and then broke apart because of earthquakes and other things that happened, right? So, and they talk about this in the science section as well. The Earth was one big landmass. Over time, through systems in the Earth, it broke apart. Okay, so that Pangaea is when it was all together. So the sea is not an ancient civilization. So we have Egypt, Mesopotamia, and ancient Rome. All right, let's talk about Mesopotamia. Very important here. Mesopotamia is considered the birthplace of civilization. We went from being hunters and gatherers to setting up shop, building homes, and building civilizations, meaning systems of rules, having agriculture, domesticating animals, having a food surplus. Before Mesopotamia, before the Sumerians, the first people in Mesopotamia were the Sumerians. We were just walking around and kind of surviving. Like we were eating what we were finding. We were killing what we were finding. When we got into the Neolithic era, that is when we said, maybe we should all stick together, stay in one place, kill food, bring it back, maybe domesticate some animals to slaughter for food, maybe grow some crops on our own in our little area, maybe save up some food for the winter and stuff like that. Let's have some laws. Let's write some stuff down. That's all really important. And it happened during the Neolithic era. And that happened, it started in Mesopotamia. It's called the cradle of civilization. And it is it's the cradle of civilization, and also called the Fertile Crescent. It is near the Tigris and the Euphrates River. All of these ancient civilizations started by rivers. Remember that for the exam. Why? Well, because a river can irrigate your crops, and it can also help you push your goods up and down the river to trade with other people who are up the river and down the river. Okay, so rivers did a lot in terms of irrigation and trade. The first people to use irrigation were the Mesopotamians. They learned to manipulate the Tigris and the Euphrates with a set of dams and systems like that to grow crops. They weren't just waiting on the rain now. They were using the river. This is big time. This is technological advancements, big time. You're not just waiting on nature to do its thing. You're actually manipulating the river. Huge for ancient civilizations, and which now has become, my sprinklers just turned on about a minute ago. That's irrigation. So that's why it's important to show students about ancient civilizations, because it impacts what we do today. It's an evolution, right? Now, the Egyptians used it as well. And then ancient Rome made it much more complex with like aqueducts and all kinds of crazy stuff. But the first people to do it were the people in Mesopotamia, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Sumerians. So really quickly, the Sumerians were the first, the Assyrians were the second, the Babylonians were the third. I go into this much more detail in the book and in the online course, but I just want you to know that. Ancient Rome did use them, but it was later on and it was much more sophisticated. All right. So that's an example of a question there. All right. Let me go back and stop sharing and see if we can get all of this. Okay. Olivia, will you give me? Okay. Looks like you guys are answering each other's question, which is always. This is probably a silly question, but Kathleen, why do we need to know some of this stuff if it is high school content? My little babies aren't going to learn some of this stuff. Okay, for sure, Meredith. And I understand, like, even the math can be considered. I mean, I think the math is really hard. It's based on the standards. So some of this is a K-6 exam. So some of it is going to be kindergarten level and some of it is going to be sixth grade level. And sixth grade level, we're getting into some of these more complex things about the westward expansion and things like that. So it is, if you're teaching the little ones, if you're first grade kindergarten, they aren't going to learn all of this, but this exam is K through 6. So, and that includes advanced K through 6. So sixth graders who are advanced. So I understand that can be frustrating, but there is no first grade test, second grade test. It's K through 6. All right. I love this question because you have to really know your stuff. Lindsay, yes, you do have to really know your stuff. Everything is kind of interconnected there. I do a pretty good job of linking everything as much as I can. But again, you could get a random question. But remember, you don't need 100% on this test to pass. You need like a D. Sometimes you need an F. You don't need 100. You don't even need an 80. You need a low D to pass this exam. So you can miss a lot and still pass, okay? Like Joelle is saying she passed with a 173. That's like 73% correct. So we'll link up my how to calculate your Praxis score into the email that we send out with you guys today. But you, in some cases, you need a 156 on this exam for the social studies. That's an F. That's like 56% ish, depending on the questions. It's not exact. You'll learn in this blog how to calculate your score, but you don't need an A. All right. So just if you don't know something, skip it and move on. All right, let's see here. How long is the online course? I mean, how many weeks? Okay, it just depends. There are several hours of video. It depends. It's self-paced, so you can go through it at your own pace. I recommend doing like a section a day, one little section a day, and that will help. All right, let's see here. K6, I teach middle school and have been told the 5003 practice 2 is what I need. Okay, Heather, K6, yes, you teach middle school. Okay, you may do the K6. I would check with your state. Middle school also has its own math. You may want to check that out, Heather. This is typically elementary ed, but your school may your state may have adopted this. Okay, you guys are all talking to each other. That's great. Let's see, Heather, 6, 7, and 8. You're not taking this test. I can almost guarantee it, Heather. You're taking middle school. Are you a middle school math teacher, Heather? Let me know in the chat and I'll see what, but you're probably not taking the 5003. The 5003 is K through 6. If you're trying to get certified, you are probably going to need to do more. Okay. Let's see here. Kathleen, I'm using 240 tutoring and I'm scoring about a 70%. I don't know. Look, 240 tutoring is another company. I don't know how their stuff is scored. A 70% is a little bit low. You're in passing range. I always like to tell people, 75 to 80% your safe zone. And then you can do that. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, you need a 159 to pass, Heather. Okay, then that's okay. That's a 59%-ish. We'll link up the blog so you can learn how to do your Praxis score. But it's basically you take your raw score percentage, you drop the, you add a 1, and that's your score, typically. Okay. All right. So let me move now to science. Let's talk about science. Again, lots of things going on with science. There are going to be a bunch of different types of questions. So this is the 5005, and we're talking earth space science, life science, and physical science. Most science tests, no matter what they are broken up by these types of content categories. Okay. Earth and space is going to be everything from, let's go right here, Earth, moon, sun, stars, Earth systems, Earth spheres, hydrosphere, biosphere, cryosphere, atmosphere, Earth's crust, the lithosphere, mountains, valleys, anything that's happening on the Earth's crust, volcanoes. And then, of course, we always want to be focused on inquiry. Remember, science is about inquiry, especially with the little guys. It's for everybody, but we want to foster a sense of inquiry at the very young ages. Okay, we want to make sure we want students to question. We want them to use the scientific method, question, form a hypothesis, test it with an experiment, do it again. Do it again, do it again. We want to do that. And also hands-on learning activities, really, really important here. All right, let's have a look at one for the Earth space section. So here is a typical one. The picture is an example of and we have water table, groundwater, lake, precipitation, evaporation. This all has to do with water. This is the hydrosphere. Hydro means water. Cryosphere it's water too, but it's the frozen water. It's ice. Biosphere is all of the living things on Earth, and geosphere is the rock record. All right. But in this case, it's focusing on rain runoff, transpiration, groundwater, evaporation, precipitation. That is the hydrosphere. All right. And again, when's the last time you thought about this? Probably not very often, right? You may be already teaching this to your kids, but you're going to have to brush up on some of this stuff. Now let's talk about life science. This is my favorite. I taught biology in high school. So for high school students, I love bio. So we have cell theory. So that's the 3 parts of the cell theory, parts of the cell. And then we move out from the cell. Systems, human systems, interdependence of organisms, ecosystems, life cycles, and of course, again, inquiry, really, really important here. You start off with the cell, and even smaller, the nucleus of the cell, and you move out all the way out to ecosystems and the world and the earth. All right, so let's have a look at what that might look like. So you're going to have energy pyramids, food webs, food chains, things like that. This has to do with ecosystems and animals. Which of the following is a producer? A producer. Now, something you should know. These guys all here are consumers. They eat things. Grass is just a producer. It produces carbohydrates by using CO2, sunlight, and water. It produces. So then the bunny eats the grass, the snake eats the bunny, this bird eats the snake, and then this hawk eats this bird. All of the energy is stored here. The most of the energy is stored here. It comes directly from the carbohydrates in the grass. The snake is still getting energy from the bunny, but as you move up the energy pyramid, energy is lost. It's reduced. That's something you need to know, because the bunny is going to use up some of the energy it got from the grass. And then when the snake eats the bunny, it's only getting some of that, and so on and so forth. And we know too, just from being part of diet culture our whole lives, that carbohydrates do come from plants, and that is where most of the energy is stored. Okay. All right. So it would be the grass here. The hawk, the snake, and the bunny, those are all consumers. And then finally, physical science. This is all physics. So physical and chemical changes, right? Tearing is a physical change. Burning is a chemical change. Rusting is a chemical change. Forces in motion, push-pull factors, friction, things like that. Electricity, lightning, stuff like that. Forms of energy. magnetic energy, kinetic energy, potential energy. Machines, you have levers, pulley, wedges. Again, something you may not have thought of for a long time. And then always, always focusing on that scientific method and inquiry. Let's have a look at a couple of questions there. Which of the following is an accurate depiction of how lightning works? All right. So again, you may not have ever been taught this, but this is like one of those weird questions. All right. Let's have a look at A. When the ground becomes positively charged, the negatively charged electrons in the cloud move down to the cloud toward the ground and lightning occurs. All right. Let's say I don't know about lightning, but I do know that positives and negatives attract. Are positives and negatives attracting here? Yes, they are, because the positively charged is going with the negatively charged. So I like A. I'm going to put a dot next to it. Let's just discredit the other ones. B, when the ground becomes negatively charged, the positively charged electrons in the cloud move down the cloud. Okay, so we have two positives and negatives attract. Okay, I'm going to keep A and B. I'm going to look at them later. Let's look at C. Particles in the cloud become intermingled and cause static electricity in the cloud where lightning occurs. Don't like it as much as I like positives and negatives attracting. D, particles on the ground become intermingled and cause static electricity. Okay, so I can see there's some patterns in these answer choices. I like positive and negatively charged things. That has a big thing to do with physics and science, and we're doing physical science here. And if I know about lightning, because I read the study guide or I did the online course, I know, and I'm going to draw you the worst picture ever. Here's a cloud. During lightning storms, the negatively charged electrons in the cloud move down the cloud and separate from the positively charged electrons. And in the ground, the negatively charged electrons move down steep into the ground, leaving positive charges on the top. And what happens? Lightning. When the attraction. Now, this is called cloud to ground lightning, and it only happens, be careful here, because this makes A correct. B is not correct because in the cloud, there has to be the negative electrons, and the ground has positive electrons, not the opposite. Not the positive electrons in the bottom of the cloud and negative electrons on the ground. That's not how it works. It's when negative electrons move down to the bottom of the cloud and positive electrons get moved up to the top of the ground, and there's a attraction there, which causes lightning. All right. Let's have a look at another one. I have three. Let's have a look at another one. I have two here. Number 9, at what point on the graph below is potential energy the highest? Potential. A is where potential energy is the highest. If I take this pen in my hand and I hold it way up here and I'm about to drop it, this is the highest potential energy. If it's laying on the ground, it's the lowest potential energy. Where potential energy is high, kinetic energy is low. Kinetic energy is the actual movement. This is kinetic. This is potential. This is potential where the pendulum stops on the other side right before it moves back this way. But E doesn't have as much potential energy as A. Notice A is way up higher, the highest potential energy. C is where kinetic energy is the highest when it's right down at the bottom. That's where kinetic energy is the highest and potential energy is the lowest. So when potential energy is high, kinetic energy is low. When kinetic energy is high, potential energy is low. And again, I go through this in the book more in depth. Okay, so that's how you might get it on the exam. All right, so let me go back here and take some questions. And that's it. That's it. All right, Kathleen, this is a lot of info needed to pass this exam and I haven't seen in 35 years or never. Yes. How do I work on my retention skills? Also, how do I deal with the wordy answers for questions that I know nothing about? All right, so good question. This is coming from CL, abbreviated name. So thank you, CL. That is part of the problem with this test. It is some concepts that you haven't seen since you were in elementary school. And some of them you may not have remembered at all. That's why it's important to get a study guide. You can get mine or you can get somebody else's and work through. Retention is really however you want to do it. You could do flashcards. Some people can read something and retain it. Other people need a video to retain it. What I like to do is kind of apply it to everyday things and really have an understanding of what's going on. I'm thinking about it a lot. Like I was just recording a video on Mesopotamia and I had to kind of dig into it a little bit. I was also doing a little research on the Civil War and what was happening during that time. And I had to, in order to film the video, I had to really retain the information as well. And so I was trying to see how one concept affects another concept. And when I do that and make connections, it really helps me retain the information. So it just depends. Another thing I would say is take it one step at a time. So this is a giant study guide. I would start with I would have a look at everything and I would kind of map out which one's going to be my hardest and which one's going to be my easiest. And then I would prioritize the hardest and start really focusing on that. And then I would take it all at once. You may get, like I said, you need like a 159 or a 156, some states a 147. This is not an A. This is like an F. And so we want to just remember that. I think that helps. When you know that you can kind of get a D and pass, it's a little bit easier. Okay. And so just take it one step at a time, take it all at once for your first time and then separate it out. That's what I recommend. Okay. What are the watch out words for in science? With science, good words are inquiry. With the science and social studies, there aren't really good words to look at in the answer choices because it's all just content. The good words, bad words, and I'm going to link up my good words, bad words video in the email. You're going to get a bunch of other videos in the email that are going to help you with this test. So make sure you check out that email. Those typically go with the language arts and reading because those are scenario based. And what CL was asking, how do I know when I've never taught before or whatever, that good words, bad words strategy, and also in my online course is going to help you identify that. You're going to be able to go, oh, that's phonics. Oh, that's phonemic awareness. Oh, that doesn't fit here. That's a bad word or that's a good word. I go through all of that in there and I work on that a lot. In these webinars and on my YouTube channel. Okay, Olivia, so glad I was able to get on and listen. I've been studying for the last month and I test next Friday and you have good strategies to eliminate incorrect answers. Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Good luck on your exam. I know a lot of you are taking it. So should we start studying with our hardest subject? I would say yes, Marie. I would study with the hardest. I would look over the easiest and maybe do a practice test or do at the end of each section of this book. Let me show you something really quickly. Sorry, let me just show you kind of how to use the book to study really quick. Okay, so I'm going to go to I'm going to use the book really quickly just so you can see how to study here, okay? So what I would do is I would go through the 4 sections, right? And you may go to the science and go, oh, I know this. Earth, space, got it. These are easy. I remember all this, whatever, right? And I'm going to say from my experience, the reading and language arts is probably going to be the hardest and the math. If you're someone who's been successful in math, you probably just have to review a little bit in math. Everybody's different. Some people come and they're like, I can't do the math. It's so hard. And other people are like, I can't do the English language arts. It's so hard. It just depends. Of course, you can be good at both of them. It's just that you might need more help in one or the other. And so what I would do is I would zero in on the one that you are having the most trouble with and then break it up. I would probably take a good week or so to go through the reading. Okay, let's go to the reading. You can see here that I go through, today I just touched on it, but here I'm going through phonological awareness, phonemic awareness. I break down onset and rhyme. You are going to be very fully prepared for this exam when you buy this book, all right? Or you can piece it together on my YouTube channel too. I have a whole reading playlist on my YouTube channel that'll help you. But this also helps. And then at the end of each section, let me just show you really quickly. This is how the second edition differs from the first. At the end of each section, I have 10 questions for just this content category, foundational skills. So you can see exactly what those questions will look like. Not exact questions, but what they might look like on the exam, and then very detailed answer explanations. Then you can see I have literature and informational text, the next one that I go through, and we work on 10 questions. Let me just go. There's a lot of information here. Hang on. Sorry. Let me find the test. Practice. There we go. Then I have practice tests just for information and literary texts, right? Then we get into writing, speaking, and listening. Again, writing, it's a big one. Common types, the writing process, literary devices. I mean, this is a lot of stuff. It is a really hard test, you guys. And then I have questions just on that. So I would get the study guide and take it one step at a time. One section at a time. Once you've mastered this, then I would go to the next section. Let's say math is your jam. You're like, I love math. Math is so awesome. What I would do is, let me go to math. This is English language. Oh, and then there are 2 practice test questions at the end of each subject too. So you get 2 full practice tests as well. Okay, so mathematics. We got the whole thing here. And then I go through, and this is set up a little bit differently. The math examples are embedded with the actual explanations because I find that people kind of like this better because I'm talking about place value here. And then I have the question. This will help you with the math. But in the videos of my online course, I go through it. So, all of that, I would go through this. What I might do is go to the practice test, go to the first practice test. Let me go here. Sorry, I don't want to make you dizzy by going through all of this. Come on, where are you? There we go. Go through the first practice test. I might take the first practice test and get a baseline and see where I'm at, and then go in and fix up whatever I'm low in. And then I would go back and take the second practice test. You can see this is the first practice test, tons of information, detailed answer explanations here. And then there's the second practice test. Hang on. Here. So lots of information here. And if you're teaching the little ones, like somebody said, there's some questions in here. You're like, my kids aren't going to do this, but they would in 6th grade. They would in 6th grade. And then of course, the science and the social science, same thing. Like I have all this information for the social studies. This is the US history and all of that. And then at the end, I have test questions just for that. And then, and I do that for each section. And then there's a big, here's world history practice test questions. And then we have 2 full practice tests at the end. All right. So I would take it one step at a time. If we're talking about the sections of the exam, let me go back up here. You may want to just take the reading and foundational skill questions here first, then move into here. For math, I might just do this 1 week, numbers and operations, just focus on that, or a couple of days. Once you've got that, then move to algebraic thinking. They're kind of progressive in that one builds on the other. Make sure you do the practice test, look at the answer explanations, and zero in on where you're low. Okay? All right, let me go back here. Okay. I'm trying to get to all your questions, guys, but there's like 250 of you in here. So I just want to make sure. Let's see. Somebody's asking about a read aloud. I'm not sure what they're talking about there. Something about a read aloud. Where is the test booklet and how much is this information? How much is it? This information is very helpful. Okay, Calvin, let me show you on the website. Let me show you a couple things and to get more free resources. Okay, first of all, website. My website, KathleenJasper.com. Under our programs, you can go to 5001, or if you just want the study guide, go to Study Guide, Elementary Education 5001. It'll come up here. We also offer extra practice tests. You don't have to buy them. Some people like them because they want more practice tests. These are 2 full practice tests that are all of them. That's why these are practice test A for the 5001. That means an extra 5002 practice test, 03, 04, 05. And then we have another one here. If you just want the book, you can uncheck it here. Oops, let's go here. And you can just buy the book. You can also buy it by subtest. You don't have to buy the whole book. Let's say you only need math. You can just buy the math subtest. But if you need more than one subtest, buy the whole book. It's cheaper that way. You can also get a physical copy on Amazon. If you prefer a physical copy, you can get it on Amazon. Buy the Prime. Do not buy this person Spiral Bound. This is not me. This is me. I don't know who this is. I don't know why they keep doing that, but that's not me. I don't charge $79 for a book. Okay. We have tons of 5-star reviews. Lots of people have used this book to pass. It covers everything. And we have other study guides as well. And then let me go back to my thing here. I have online courses So you just go here to Praxis 5001. You can get the whole course, or you can get extra practice tests as well, or you can just get the math if you need one or whatever. With the online course, let me just go and show you really quickly one more time the online course. There are videos, like for the math, there are videos for every single practice test question. There are downloads where I take the questions in the book and blow them up so you have them as slides. Let me show that. You can download this. It's the same information in the book, but this is what I go over in the videos. So you could even just print out this. If you got the digital book, you can just print out these 15 pages and use it while I go through the questions in the book. It's meant for you to kind of do the math with me. Okay. You can pause it. You can do the math with me if you're struggling with math. Okay. So that really helps there so much in the math. And again, I go through every single question that's in the book. There's a video for it. You can see it here. Okay. I also have online courses for the language arts. We talk about these foundational skills, phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, phonics. I break it down. A lot of new teachers don't know this stuff. It's hard. So I break those down, and there are quizzes and videos. And then with the social studies and science, same thing, videos, practice tests, all of that. I just had these two up here. Now, where you can also find me is on YouTube. So let's say you are wanting to keep it on the cheap. You don't want to buy a $150 course. I totally get it. Go in here. You'll see one thing for you to work on your language arts and reading, teaching reading here. This playlist is going to help you. I also have a math playlist. Somebody was asking me about the leadership exam. I have leadership videos, and I'm also going to be doing a leadership webinar similar to this one here. I'll show you where to get those in a second. So my YouTube channel has tons of content here. Also, if you want, you can go to my website under free webinars. There are also lots of free webinars. Today, I'm doing the 5001. Next week, I'm doing a teacher resume because a lot of you are trying to get jobs. So I have a new teacher resume and interview process webinar to go with my new teacher interview course. I'll talk to you about that in a second. I have ESOL, Praxis Core, PLT, Early Childhood, Special Ed, Teaching Reading. I have SLLA and 5412. This is the leadership. I also have some other ones here, how to lesson plan, all of it. There's lots of webinars here, just like this one, where you get a little study guide and I go through everything. Next week, remember, it's the teacher resume and interview process. Really awesome. This is under my free webinars page. Also, I have a new teacher interview course. This is just $39.99, and this will help you with your interview. I hired lots and lots of teachers over my career. I know what they're going to ask you. I know how you should answer. If you're looking for a job, I would recommend this. And you get the coupon code in the email and in the chat that we're talking about. What else? Oh, I'm on TikTok. If you like short content, I have lots of information on TikTok. Different things like what is evidence-based discussion, orthographic mapping, these concepts in quick and easy digestible bites of videos and stuff like that. I have good words and bad words TikToks here that'll help you with some of those scenario-based questions. I even have a constructed response. I do my longer videos on YouTube, and then I cut them up shorter for TikTok. What else? Facebook, we're all over Facebook. Okay. The other thing I will bring to your attention is, and we will link this up, is I have a new book for teachers, Teach a Survival Guide for New Educators. This will help you with your first years of teaching. I taught, I know what you're going through. I hired teachers. I know what they want you to say. I know how to use the standards to plan instruction, all that stuff they want you to do that you're so confused about. I totally get it. I didn't even know what a standard was until my second year of teaching. They kept talking about standards. I'm like, what are these standards they're talking about? Second year, I finally got it. So I put it all down here for you. So that's, and I have all types of books. Oh, one more thing. Some of you, I have a new book, the 7001. Now, you don't need this. If you're taking your exam in the next couple of months. This starts in September, but some of you may have colleagues who have to take this. Like Louisiana is adopting this, Kansas and Missouri. If you're in Louisiana right now, you're taking the 5001. Do not panic. But if you are in Louisiana in September, they're going to want you to take the 7001. So I made a new book, 7001, super awesome. You do not need it for you, but your colleagues might. So make sure you tell them about that. Okay. I have to say you are extremely impressive from the way that you teach. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate that. I love teaching, and I hope you do too. And I love teaching teachers. So I love the way you promote your items by not promoting your items. Awesome. Yeah, you can use my stuff or you can use any stuff. Just think critically and use my strategies. Go to my YouTube channel for my test strategies because you can apply that to anybody's book or course and mine as well. I have the first book, but the second one looks more detailed. Do you still recommend? Brianna, you don't need to buy the second book. Save your money. What I might do if you're struggling with math, I might just get the course, the math course, and then you'll get the math book. Or you may want to just add a practice test. You can buy one of the practice tests. I wouldn't buy both of those books. They're very similar. It is a little more detailed, but it's not going to push you over the edge. So if you already paid $39.99, don't buy another book. Okay, just maybe buy a practice test or go into YouTube and use some of the free stuff. Do you suggest? Okay, 1056, Kathleen. My coworker has 2 chances left to pass in her second hardest area. Do you suggest her focus on one area at a time or both? 2 chances to pass. Why? You must be in New Jersey. Didn't they limit you guys? Like you have to take it and like you only get 5 times or something. I don't know. This is hard for me. I don't know what the person's abilities are. It'd be like me asking you to evaluate a student you've never seen work. I would say really focus on the content and the skills and not practice tests. Get to know those skills. If I don't pass the 5001 test by September, do I need to take the 7001? Okay, Meredith, maybe. It depends on your state. But here's the thing. The 7001 and the 5001 are almost identical. The only difference is the language arts section is a little more detailed. Don't worry about it. You're fine. My book, the first book covers it. It's just they switch things around. Will the digital book work with text to speech on the computer? Yes, it will. It's a PDF, Jenny. It's a PDF. So if it's a PDF reader, text to speech, it'll work. Wait, if I plan to take the Praxis later in the year, I should be buying the 7001. Lori, it depends on your state. If I'm only mentioning the 7001 so that you guys, some of you may have to take it in September. Check your website to see if the 7001 is what you need. But I just want you to know that we do have a book if you're in a state that uses this. Okay. Kathleen, thank you so much. I'm on the permanent and I can from another state order as much help. Awesome. I'm so glad this helped. Missouri only gets 3 times. Okay. Missouri, Michelle is switching to this test in September. Wow. 3 times? That's annoying. They must be short on teachers then, Michelle. Some colleges limited how many times you can take it. That's unfortunate. All right, Patricia, thank you so much. Lori, okay. Listen, yes, Illinois, you're good with the 5001, Nora. I didn't mean to scare you guys about the 7001. Don't be scared, okay? It's just another test. It's almost identical to the 5001. The only difference is the reading and language arts. And my reading and language arts in the 5001 covers almost everything in the 7001. So they just rename tests. But if you're in a state that's changing, they'll tell you. So go to the state, go to the Praxis website and search scores by state or tests by state, and it'll tell you. I love the no nonsense approach. You know, we don't have time. Oh, I know you don't have time, Lindsay. Absolutely. Okay. I have the Praxis course 2nd edition. Is that the latest book? Yes, it is. It's the latest. I know it has some dates on there. The Praxis core hasn't changed. Keep working in that book. Okay. Thank you. I passed 502 and 503 first time only from your book. Yay, Nora. Awesome. Patricia from Florida. Welcome. Okay. Listen, I'm going to go because I am 2 hours now. This is a long one. Thank you so much for being here. We had so many people in the webinar. This was fantastic. I really, really, really appreciate you guys. If you have any questions, you can get us at info@kathleenjasper.com. Remember, if you bought the book and you want the course, we will give you that voucher so you can go ahead and buy it with the discount of the book. And if you have any questions, let us know, and let us know about your successes too. We love to get those emails. I really appreciate you. Thank you for being teachers. Thank you for being awesome. And I will see you next week for the teacher resume and interview. And we'll put that in the email as well. Be on the lookout for that email. Have a great day. Bye.